We are also live on our website, 3news.com. Coming up on the show today, we're going to be trying to discuss the issues coming off the back of the Supreme Court's ruling, where, for instance, the 4 seats that were declared vacant by the Speaker of Parliament have been turned. Indirectly, those 4 members of Parliament are expected back in Parliament. Let's put that aside. Our conversation this morning will narrow down to the specific constituencies. What exactly are the parties doing to ensure that they actually do win those seats into their fold? In the case of Fomena, where an independent candidate is joining the party, it probably wouldn't be much of a problem. But what's happening in Suhum, what's happening elsewhere in Agona Central, would the parties be able to hold those seats for themselves? Or the individuals within the party who are going independent, will they snatch the seat from the political parties? We'll try and dissect all those dynamics for you and find out how the emotions on the ground are feeding into whether the parties would win or independent candidates are likely to win. That and more in a jiffy. Also, we'll go back to the Ashanti region. Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia is still in the party's stronghold. Why so? It's the 10th day and counting. Dr. Bawumia has crisscrossed almost all the constituencies, 47 of them, in the Ashanti region, and is still there trying to ensure that the numbers they intend to get, the 85% they hope to win, actually materializes. But how are people taking on to the message that he's giving them? We'll try and give you better analysis of why he stayed there and what next he intends to do as flag bearer of the party in the party's stronghold. And later, the Convention People's Party has actually finally launched its manifesto with barely 20 days to the elections. In fact, today is 22 days to December 7. The CPP has now launched their manifesto. We'll try and pick some key highlights of it for you to also be in the know of what's happening. Welcome to Election360. I am Martin Nesiedudati. We'll dig into the details in a moment. Good to have you back on the show. So let's get into the specific conversations we have for you this morning. And you can see right beside me is the number 22. 22 days to election 2024, where Ghanaians turn out in their numbers to go and vote. 22 days. Keep that number in mind. It keeps counting down. And here at your Election Command Center, we'll be helping you count down and bring the relevant issues you need to have at the top of your mind as you go to the polling booth to cast your ballot. And there are key issues we'd also want to discuss with you. One of it is what we have termed the nuggets, the electoral nuggets. Now, it is important because everything we do as a democracy is backed by law. And even as we prepare to go and vote, there are certain things that we have done over time that are against the law. We are flouting the law in doing some specific things, and we want to take you through them quite quickly. And today, our focus is on what you should do when you are within the space of where voting is done. On election day, on December 7, when you go there, what are the do's and don'ts that are expected from you as the voter and from the state security apparatus that would also be deployed to ensure that the environment is safe and serene for all of us to vote? To discuss this, I've been joined in studio by Joseph Akable, my colleague who's actually been digging and working around a number of these things for us. Joseph, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Let's
go through our election nugget for today. So I'm going to read it, then maybe we'll try and discuss to bring out the meaning thereof. It says, during the hours when a poll is open on polling day, a person shall not, within 500 meters of a polling station, seek to influence in whatever manner a person to vote for a candidate or to ascertain for which candidate or a voter intends to vote or has voted for. Simply put,
yeah, I mean, this is what we see happening a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You see within the voting area, you have people who are there campaigning for candidates.
Right.
It's actually contrary to law. So they are at the booth around the area. They are telling people that, look, to Abapa or vote for this person, don't vote for that person. Again, sometimes they are asking people, who are you going to vote for? Or trying to find out, who did you vote for?
Yeah.
This one says that within 500 meters of the polling area, you are being told that, look, you cannot seek to influence in whatever manner who a person should vote for in terms of a candidate, or to seek to ascertain for which candidate a voter intends to vote for or has voted for as well. And so that again comes back to the point you made earlier about how a lot of these things we are just doing them, but they are contrary to law. So within the voting area, 500 meters, you cannot undertake in such an activity there.
More or less, you cannot campaign within a voting area, or 500 meters away from where voting is taking place. You cannot campaign. In fact, we also know that you are not supposed to even be wearing party paraphernalia in and around an election area. So have this at the back of your mind. If you do see anybody 500 meters to a voting at a voting area, draw the attention of the police officers who will be deployed there to assist in correcting that error. Also, it goes on to say, during the hours when a poll is open on polling day, a person shall not within 500 meters of a polling station sell intoxicating liquor. Simply put,
I mean, this one, you know why they are saying that. I mean, because, you know, elections tensions are high, and you don't want people to be intoxicated. I mean, in simple terms, alcohol and all those things that can make you quite intoxicated and sometimes lose your senses and engage in violent conduct, among other things. So what this is seeking to do is to prevent such transactions from taking place. And so you cannot be seeking to have such products sold at those particular places, just to ensure that people are clear in their minds on voting day, they go and vote. And so this is a very important piece of law
that
as well.
They need to have at the back of their minds. So, I mean, we are not saying do that, but if you want to get intoxicated before you go and vote, do that out of that 500-meter space that has been clearly demarcated by the law before you go there to vote. And then in conclusion, we say that a person who contravenes a provision of this section commits an offense and is liable on a conviction to a fine not exceeding 200 penalty units. In current terms, that's about 2,400 Ghana cedis, or to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 12 months, or both the fine and the imprisonment. And this actually, to show you that it is actually law, we're picking it from the Representation of the People Law 1992 PNDC CL 284. So you are minded to keep this at the back of your mind if you go out to vote. But what exactly does this say? Trying to influence people?
I mean, so this is the punishment basically for the two offenses that we discussed. So the first about the fact that you cannot influence them to vote for someone or seek to find out who they are voting for within 500 meters of the voting area. Then the second one being the issue of selling liquor within 500 meters of a polling station. And so if you commit any of these two offenses and you are taken to court and found guilty, either you will be imposed with a fine of 2,400 cedis on its own, or you may get a term of imprisonment not exceeding 12 months, or there's the possibility that they can give you the 12 months and you also be asked to pay the fine of 2,400 cedis.
Well, clear. The law is very clear. This one, you don't need Supreme Court interpretation for it technically. You just need to understand that don't drink, or if you want to drink or sell alcohol or any other liquor within a specific catchment area, don't do that. Also, we've seen it, even in recent by-elections we covered, there were people who were influencing people. You go and vote, they want to see who you voted for, and then they exchange for cash. All of that are wrong. Unfortunately, we flout them with impunity. We here at your Election Command Center, as part of the build-up and public education and awareness creation, we are telling you that there are laws backing all of these things, and be mindful when you go to the polling station to vote that you do not fall foul of any of these. You're still watching Election 360. Now we're going to dive into the main conversations for today. Like I indicated, the Supreme Court a few days ago came out with its reasons, actually yesterday, but a few days ago came out with a 5-2 decision that the Speaker of Parliament was wrong in declaring 4 seats vacant. They've given their reasons. But let's look at the technicalities of what exactly is happening in and within the parties. And for those going independent, how does this even help or influence their activities in the various constituencies? We're starting from the Fomena constituency. Why is this a constituency of interest? One, it's one of the 4 that were declared vacant. Now, the Member of Parliament, Andrew Isiama, is still a Member of Parliament based on what the Supreme Court has said. However, if you follow the backstory, he used to be a member of the NPP, came to Parliament on the ticket of the NPP. Because of internal wranglings and primaries, he lost. There were issues. The party booted him out because he said he wanted to go independent and won as an independent candidate. So NPP lost in that constituency, but managed to work their way to get him into their fold. But for him, the NPP wouldn't be majority in parliament, right?
Absolutely. And it's very interesting because, look, what the Supreme Court has effectively done is that they've more or less said that the actions of these individuals does not affect their position in parliament currently.
The current parliament.
Position. So in simple terms, they are still within the fold of their various parties. And so if you pick a seat like Fomena, and Fomena is very unique, like you did indicate, because unlike the other ones that we'll be looking at subsequently, with this one, you have an individual who is returning to the fold of the New Patriotic Party, as against the other ones where you have someone leaving the NDC and you again have other two individuals leaving the NPP. And so for Fomena constituency, it's a typical NPP seat. Since 1996, 7 times they've won the presidential polls there. No contest, the NDC, they do not do well over there at all. In terms of the parliamentary, you can see 601. The one is for Andrew Esiama, the independent candidate who is currently the second deputy speaker of parliament. And like you did indicate, 2020, when he was unhappy with how the party had conducted the primaries, MPP primary, he left the fold of the party. After the party had actually even said that, look, he's not someone that they could work with. They dismissed him from the party. His seat was declared vacant. The president went there and said that he cannot work with an independent candidate. We saw what happened. He showed them power. He won the election. The NPP had to go back to him and plead with him to come back and do business with them. And that ensured that the NPP had a hold. The NDC still did not really stand any chance there.
They couldn't capitalize on this issue.
And when we look closely at the outcome there, you see Andrea Esiama Mwaku getting 12,805. You see Philip Ofoya Ashanti, who represented the NPP, getting 10,798, with the NDC's Christina Barabu getting 2,608. So you see that even though you technically had 2 people from the NPP contesting the same election,
right,
the NDC's chances were still very insignificant.
Slim. Right.
It didn't really improve their chances in any manner. Yeah. And so going into the 2024 election, the NDC, they've changed their candidate. The NPP is also changing their candidate, but they are bringing the current member of parliament back into the fold. And so it promises to be one that, all other things being equal, the NPP is likely to regain it. Even though they still have an individual who is within their fold because he's an independent candidate, is coming back to the NDC.
You know, for this one, the other issue that some will talk about is what really is on the minds of the NPP voters in the region or in the constituency. We know there are some who would vote NDC. Clearly, for 2,000 people voting for you in a constituency, if you tally all of these numbers, you're looking at about maybe 33,000 thereabout, right? So out of that, you have 2,600 that voted for the NDC. It could go up, it could come down, but at least there is a number for the NDC. But within the fold of the NPP, that was split because there was an independent candidate who the party preferred. Now that he's coming into the fold of the party, wouldn't that be a slap in the face of those that disagreed with how the party dealt with the previous misunderstandings? Could it be that they've managed to resolve all the underlying issues that brought Andrew Esiama breaking out to be an independent candidate? If so, then we can safely say, or even between now and December 7, project that it's going to be an easy win for the NPP.
In fact, the good thing that they did with the primaries that took place, so if you recall, when they were doing the primaries to decide who leads them in which constituency, they didn't organize one for Fomena. Right. They waited for a while after they had done the main one, and subsequently they just did a declaration for Andrew Esiama. And I mean, it's clearly because of how, despite how the party had treated him, he nonetheless stuck with the party. I mean, I remember during the discussions around who forms the majority, there were suggestions that the NDC had tried to even reach out to him, potentially for him to have joined them or caucus with them. I mean, this is someone, the president of the land said, he cannot do business with an independent member.
It's shocking, right? That the president will go to the constituency to say that he cannot work with an independent.
And that notwithstanding. So, I mean, a lot of people will say he's a proper party man.
Yes.
Because that notwithstanding, he put the interest of the NPP above his personal disagreement with the president and the governing Patriotic Party, for that matter. Went back into their fold, worked with them, was second deputy speaker, has now gone in and is going to represent them in the party. I do not see much of a problem happening with Fomena if you compare to the other areas.
And it also tells you that you cannot discount the intelligence of the electorate. The electorate knew who they wanted to vote for. Or a few days ago on the show, we discussed the how national politics is totally different from parliamentary politics or parliamentary elections. For parliamentary, a number of people in the last elections voted skirt and blouse because the dynamics are totally different from the national one. Here, it could also stem from the fact that this man, because he was an indigene of the area, people knew him beyond political lines. So there is a likelihood that there were even people who are NDC or of other political lineage that voted for him because of the personal relationship or the fact that he was one of them, a home person. So like we indicated, it is straightforward, likely that he's returning to Parliament, and the NPP had to find ways of reasoning with him by even giving him the position he holds in Parliament. It probably was one of the baits they threw to get him to work or caucus with them in Parliament. So that's what's happening in the Fomena constituency. It's one of the 4 we are discussing, the 4 that were declared vacant. Now that decision has been reversed. And from Fomena, we're going to one other that is very key in terms of the bones of contention and how both the NDC and the NPP need to work. Otherwise, if still things stand as they are, the NPP is likely to lose 2 of their seats, or currently they are within their fold, but if the elections are anything to go by, that these 2 people are going independent. If they do go and move with the numbers, and we'll show you the numbers, they go with the numbers that they won with, there's a likelihood it could affect the numbers of the NPP in Parliament for the 9th Parliament. But before we do the NPP, let's go to Amenfi Central. What's happening in Amenfi Central? Amenfi
is very similar to Fomena, but I think your only disagreements will be on the strength of the candidates involved potentially, whether Peter Kwachiaka will be as strong as you had Andrea Mwakwesi Amabin. The similarity I make the point about is the fact that this is also the stronghold of the NDC, like the way Fomena is the stronghold of the MPP. Amenfi Central is a stronghold of the NDC. So you've seen the presidential results since 1996. The NDC has won 7 times. The MPP is yet to win there. For the 2020 parliamentary results, for instance, you saw the NDC winning with a difference of 4,174. And so it's not, someone will look at it and say, well, it's not too wide a gap. But the context really is that the NDC tends to do very well. Now, the challenge for the NDC is that their front is divided at this particular level here because there's Joanna Jan Kujo, who is the NDC's candidate. In the previous discussions that we had put a question mark. She's now on the ballot now. They've gotten the call to set aside that injunction. Then there is Patrick Hodgson Ampontin, who is the MPP candidate, also the DCE for Wasa Amenfi Central District. Then there is Peter Kwachiaka, the current member of Parliament, who is contesting as an independent candidate. So the question many are asking is, look, the difference of 4,000 that we have here, if Kwachiaka picks up, say, 6,000 of those votes, is he picking the 6,000 from here or is picking from here? There are those who say that, look, he's an NDC man. He's going to pick most likely from here because he was on the ballot in 2020 anyways, and they gave him 26,000. So the thinking is that if he does anywhere around 5,000 to 6,000, then potentially Joanna Kujojan is in danger.
And that is if all things remains constant and the NPP still give at least above 20,000 to their candidate.
Absolutely. And so then that becomes an issue of, well, what will happen there? But what many are also looking out and saying is that, look, she's a strong candidate because she was disqualified. And we all saw people protesting in the area. We all saw individuals going on the streets and saying that, look, we have to have her back in the election because of how crucial they considered her to be in that area. Peter Kwachiaka, interestingly, had a similar posturing like the Fomena member of Parliament when this whole vacant seat Buhar started. I mean, he stated quite clearly that he didn't have any problem if the NDC was unable to get a candidate onto the ballot. He didn't mind doing business with them and even helping them win the seat, even though he was contesting as an independent candidate. I don't know whether you think we could have Fomena play out and Peter Kwachiaka grabbing the seat, but I think it will certainly come down to how well the NDC is able to improve its numbers. If the MPP is able to still keep its performance within this range, then if Kwachiaka just crosses the 4,000 range, then Joanna Kujo potentially could be in trouble.
Yeah, and then again, it's also quite surprising to note that in the constituency, it was the first time in a long time that a primary that went, no, let me rephrase. So it's the first time that leadership of the NDC had to go to the constituency to try and resolve the issue because the leadership of the national leadership of the NDC thought that from that very level, they preferred this candidate. They've had their own issues with Peter Kwachiaka and wanted this lady to stand. However, there were internal issues on the ground. So for the party to even send a lawyer to represent her, for them to stay consistent, in fact, hold a press conference where Fifi Kwete himself had to address the media, it tells you the national leadership of the party have particular interest in the Amenfi Central constituency. Yeah. Although it's a safe seat for them, they've won it over time.
I mean, it's because of the danger of the numbers. And in the game of politics, especially with what you've seen in the current parliament of 137 with one independent candidate, if you want to lose a seat, what you don't want to lose is your safe seat.
Yes.
It makes sense if you struggle over the floating ones, the swing ones, like we call them, and maybe lose one or two there. But you want to start the election off with your safe seat in hand, so that at least you fight for the others and hope that you end up forming the majority. So that is the story at Amenfi Central.
Right. And is the MPP repeating their candidate?
Yes, they are coming with Patrick Hodgson Ampontin, who is currently the DCE for Wasa Amenfi Central District. He's been embarking on quite a number of projects there in the area as well. It's a typical mining area. It's one of the areas that battles with illegal mining as well. Right. And so it's one of those areas that people can look at and say that, look, has government done enough to fight illegal mining? Will it have any implications, etc., etc.? All those issues are things that they will look at over there as well.
All right. So, and then again, he also buttresses the point that local politics, you cannot undermine or, you cannot underrate the thinking of the people on the ground. It was interesting how people on the ground had to advocate and keep pushing until national leadership thought that, no, we needed to go and try and rectify the situation and then get everyone in line. So fortunately, they have their candidate, their preferred candidate. As to how that would affect Peter Yaokwache is a different ballgame. We'll try and look at that in subsequent conversations here on Election360. So from Amenfi Central, we're going to the two key constituencies that are now within the fold of the NPP, with the NPP candidates deciding to walk away from the party and go independent, starting from the Suhum constituency. What's the story when it comes to presidential? So
for the presidential, we see 6-1. The MPP has picked it up 6 times, 2000, 04, 08, 2012, 2016, and 2020. The NDC, the only time, 1996. And so that is one that you can say that the presidential is comfortably an MPP seat. And it's interesting because it is in the central region. And central region, most of the seats mostly do not behave this way. Right. But we have that particular constituency behaving that way. So this is for Suhum in the eastern region, actually, which is a stronghold of the governing New Patriotic Party. Right. And so you've seen it 6-1. And so that is very typical of how the Eastern region tends to vote. When you go for the parliamentary, it's also very similar to the situation for the presidential as well. So you also have that one also being 6-1 there, the MPP picking it 6 times, the NDC just coming once. The 2020 results, you see a difference of 14,857. What is going to be a bit of a challenge going into this year's election is the fact that there's Frank Esiedu Bekwen Protozwa, like he's called. There's Prince K. Ado Tebe, who is contesting for the NDC. Then there's the independent candidate, Kojo Asante, who is the current member of parliament, who was the one who got 34,049 votes. And when we compared this figure to the previous 2016, he had increased the numbers of the MPP in the Suhum constituency. And so that tells you that, look, he's a formidable candidate. And it took him a while to declare his intention to contest as an independent candidate. Like many politicians do many at times when elections don't go their way. He said he was waiting and listening to the grassroots, and the calls were too loud, and so he decided to throw his hat into the race. So he's coming in. And so the question again that we asked for the other ones is that if the MPP candidate does around this, and you have Kojo Asante coming in and even crossing 15,000, or is he going to be able to get a 30,000 range that he got? Do the people of Suhum love him enough? Protozwa is a staffer at the presidency. Right. And many accusations were made about issues of illegal mining. They had also talked about the fact that, look, they felt that the powers that be at the Jubilee House were solidly behind him, and that is what took Kojo Asante out of that parliamentary primary and resulted in his defeat. All those are matters that the party, unfortunately, could not resolve in a timely manner. Right. He's been deemed to be doing business with the MPP in parliament, but on the ticket, this is how it looks, and he'll be joining them as well. And so it comes back to whether these numbers are anything to go by and whether it will have any implications. It brings to mind the Fomena constituency conversation again, where someone from within the fold of the NPP has decided to go independent because of unresolved primary issues. And he clearly, from everything he has said, the interviews he's granted, show that he has been outmuscled by Protozwa or Frank Esiedu Bekwen, who has the institution backing him. So he is actually aggrieved. And again, political parties are unable to resolve some of these things properly or in time for major elections. So it looks like, based on how the seat has voted in time past, it could be a safe seat for the NPP. Look at the NDC's numbers.
even after the NDC held their primaries and settled on Prince K. Adotebri, the NDC members in the constituency started raising concerns that their gentleman or their candidate had disappeared. In fact, there were stories about he going missing. And it was on the back of the fact that he is actually a resident out of the country. So right after the primaries, he traveled out, and they believed that he was going to try and get some funding to come and push his campaign. So within that period of his absence, the party people were concerned that they couldn't find him, and it was affecting mobilization and campaign activities. Well, we do know that he's back, but as to whether or not he actually has the entire backing of the NDC to at least sustain the 19,000 or increase it is a different conversation. And also on the back of the fact that the person he contested with, and we're talking about the NDC candidate, the person he contested with actually still has some backing within the fold of the NDC. So immediately he wasn't seen around for about a week or two. That candidate was being projected more or less. But of course, electorally, this is the man that had been elected. So the NDC had no option than to back him. If he is to undo the potential win of the MPP, then he needs to claw way past 25,000. Then it means that this difference is what he also needs to, or the NDC needs to capitalize on, try as much as possible to even half this and add to their numbers, and then we can actually have a two-horse race. I
mean, I think the point needs to be made strongly that it's important for political parties to make their internal process as democratic as possible. Because if you simply look at the trend and say that it's a safe seat for our party, we go back to Fomena, and Fomena will tell you that you can't downplay that. But I agree with you perfectly on the fact that he needs to do a bit better. But the advantage that he gets going into the race is the fact that he is going to naturally get votes from the NDC. So the NDC, if the NDC is generally doing around this figure, because of the increase in the voter population in that area generally and everything, he can simply go a little above the 19,000. Now, the danger is this difference here. If the MPP's current member of parliament, if he just manages to claw anything from within this range, and if he is within the 10,000 range, that makes it very dangerous for the fortunes of the MPP. And so it comes down to the point about how important it is always that you just don't want to be in this situation. And I keep on saying that with what happened with the 137, it was very important that the parties ran their primaries in a manner that was credible or at least satisfactory to even people who are peeved with the outcome, so that some of these things do not happen. Yeah, so it's going to be a very keenly contested constituency there at Suhum. The NDC has, or probably is, you can say it probably is for the NDC to lose, because the NPP is currently split between the incumbent and another individual contesting on the ticket of the NPP. All right, our final constituency we are looking at out of the 4 that were declared vacant and reversed is the Agona West constituency. It's an interesting conversation here because it is, you can't say it is an all clear for the NPP. Why so? If you look at the numbers, the number of times the NPP has won, 5 times. The NDC has won it twice. 96, of course, under former President Rawlings in the early days of our democracy, so people didn't really know what was happening. They preferred NDC at the time. But over time, the conversation has changed. Now we have the NDC also winning in 2012, and in 2012, the key pointer is that that was when former President John Evans Atta Mills had died, and there was a natural sympathy vote that supported the NDC candidate then. So presidential-wise, the NDC won that election in that constituency as well. But for the parliamentary, when the NDC won, the margin wasn't that big. But let's look at why it is under contention. There is an issue within the fold of the NPP. Why is there an issue in the fold of the NPP? I mean, you have a former minister, Cynthia Morrison, is a former gender minister. She's contesting as an independent candidate. And so coming up against Paul Ofori Amwa. So this was the 2020 results, actually, and this is how it looked. So she was able to grab the seat, getting 30,513. And you have the NDC candidate getting a little 27,673. Then you have the independent candidate getting about 1,000 votes. Now, the difference was 2,840. The challenge really is going into the 2024 contest. So just like the other 3 that we've discussed, the NPP has a candidate there, Christopher Arthur, there's Cynthia Morrison, then the NDC is bringing Ernestina Ofori Dambe. It's been a contentious race one of fights. You recall the gunshots, that incident that happened. The story is that some persons belonging to both sides, the MPP and the independent candidate, clashed. Gunshots were fired. We don't know which side fired the gunshots or whatever it is. But that smells of an internal implosion that is happening, because these two individuals are typically MPP people.
And they know themselves as well.
They know themselves as well. But due to internal disagreements and not being happy with the outcome of the elections, Cynthia Morrison is going as an independent candidate. And when they were doing the press conferences with this whole thing happening in Parliament, she was with Afenya Makin and co.
And I think that Cynthia Morrison, I mean, as an observer from afar, I get the feeling Cynthia Morrison is confusing her voters. Are you breaking away from the party, or you are actually with the party? The fact that you say you are going independent doesn't mean that you can still do business with the party. You should clearly define those lines. And unfortunately, that is where people still keep going back to the declaration of the speaker and why they thought that should have stood. The Supreme Court's decision now even brings further confusion to electorates, especially when you have Cynthia Morrison doing business with the MPP, still going to meet the leadership. And I get the feeling that she thought that she needs their backing to win the seat. But they cannot come and back you openly when they also have a candidate in the race. So there's going to be the Fomena issue likely to play out. I mean, in that
the only advantage for Cynthia Morrison, for Kojo Asante, I think there's an advantage that a lot of us maybe are not looking at yet, is the fact that if they win as independent candidates, it shouldn't be too difficult for them to continue to do business with the MPP because of how they've conducted themselves around this time. Because unlike the Fomena situation as well, the president hasn't said he can't work with Cynthia Morrison.
I think the president has advised himself.
Yes, I mean, and it will be interesting to see if Dr. Baumia goes to that constituency, what the message there will be. Because obviously he will be lifting the hand of Christopher Atta and not Cynthia Morrison.
Yes.
And there's the potential that she can win the seat as well. And so it's very dangerous for the MPP over here. The same thing with the Suhum situation as well. And it comes back to the same point that, well, what is going to happen here? Will it go in favor of the NDC? Because what the NDC would need is that they have to keep their performance or improve it and hope that this difference is clawed and some taken from this 30,000, which will be improving, I mean, because of the voter population. Some is taken from the MPP candidates. Then they will say that, well, NSCNA could stand a chance of picking up that particular constituency.
And again, it stands to reason why Cynthia thinks she has to run again. One, she won convincingly. Secondly, she became a minister. And one, you can also agree that or assume that she has enough financial muscle or resources to go again and had done things in the constituency for which she believes the people should have naturally given her another term. But, you know, politics is very dynamic. Probably while you were a minister and you're in Accra trying to do government business, someone else was doing business behind you in the constituency. So it's a major challenge for her. She just couldn't come to terms with the fact that a constituency she thought she had won convincingly for the party is breaking or is pushing her out during the primaries. So it's actually an issue she's dealt with. Unfortunately, they are unable to resolve it, and as we stand, she's going independent. As to how much damage she will do to the NPP candidate, we are unable to tell. Unfortunately, again, for the NDC, they've changed their candidate. You would have thought that based on the numbers the NDC got, 27,000 is substantial in a total vote of, let's say, 80,000. 27,000 is quite substantial. It's not too far from what the MPP candidate got. So if NDC was minded, beg your pardon, it's MPP, NDC keeps confusing. But if the NDC was minded, they could have at least either kept the candidate, unless the candidate says he or she wouldn't attempt again. They could have at least kept that candidate and do a bit more. Then the current confusion between the MPP could have helped the NDC somewhat.
I mean, there's some arrogance with the two main political parties. It's they keep on looking at the numbers and they make the point that, look, anyways, we already start around this figure. That is what keeps on playing in their minds. So it's just like even the presidential elections. The two main parties, they are going to get more than 45% anyways. And so if they don't think that it's necessarily a candidate. So if you are not getting the seat for them, sometimes they would want to simply change you and try someone else. But I mean, I agree with you. Because of now the potential of having a repeat two candidates from the same party taking place, maybe sticking to the same candidate could have helped their chances. One will also make the argument that, well, it's also a fresh face with some form of new energy that is coming in there. and the central region for generally how that particular region behaves, even though the Agona West generally is slightly an advantage for the MPP, the NDC can maybe run into it. So the work largely is on the MPP. They have a lot of work to do in the Agona West to ensure that Christopher Atta retains the seat of Cynthia Morrison, who is contesting independent, but is still in Parliament and doing business with the MPP.
All right. You're still watching Election 360 on TV3. We've just tried to bring you the other versions or the other conversations surrounding the 4 seats that have been reinstated more or less in Parliament, and we are also trying to monitor developments in Parliament. We are uncertain when the House would reconvene, but it looks like when they do, these 4 seats that we've discussed would be back in Parliament and do business with their various caucuses. But in the 9th Parliament, the conversation or the issues would definitely be very different. Stay with us. You're watching Election 360 on TV3. When we return, we'll try and dissect the other big issues we have for you, including the CPP now launching their manifesto. We'll tease out some of the key highlights for you.
I'm a Ghanaian, and I love luxury accredited faith, and I love democracy.
December 7th, Ghana is voting.
Only peace. Peace, I give it to you all.
I love Ghana.
Peaceful election before, during, and after.
One Ghana.
Peace. Peace to everybody.
One Ghana. Ghana.
This message brought to you from the luxury.
Where we build up to December 7, like we indicated, is just 22 days to December 7, and we are your surest bet when it comes to election coverage in the country. And today, as part of our show, we are bringing you what the CPP is promising or proposing to Ghanaians. Yesterday, they launched their manifesto, and they are number 7 on the ballot. Their flag bearer, Nana Nkumankuma, I'll give you the full name in a jiffy, was the one that read out what the CPP intends to do for Ghanaians. CPP is a political party that many of you already know about, that they have actually been in government before. But at the time, in the 50s, 60s, their presidential candidate was Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. After the 57 election, when we gained independence, he was president of the republic. And throughout the period, I mean, up until today, some of the key big issues that the country is enjoying was under the period when Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was president, including the most famous Kwame Nkrumah motorway, the Tema motorway, the airport, I beg your pardon, the Tema Harbour, and then also KNUST in Kumasi. So the party has, whilst in power, did some very significant things that we cannot underestimate or rule out of our political conversations. That's the Convention People's Party. The current crop of CPP leadership say that they have something different from what the NDC and MPP is promising. So she's saying that out of their manifesto, the key pillars they are focusing their attention on, if they do get the nod of the Ghanaian voter, is one, economic ownership and prosperity. They are promising that they are going to ensure they build the Ghanaian economy so much so that we own it and become prosperous on our own. Secondly, industrialization as the engine of change. Industrialization is very topical whenever you're talking about the Convention People's Party, because a number of factories were built under the earlier CPP when the former president Kwame Nkrumah was in power. A number of factories and industries we have in Ghana, and many of you can attest to it, were built by him. It's been decimated, disintegrated. Most of it are not functioning anymore for a number of reasons. But at least at the time, the country was booming because people had jobs and there was a lot of money flowing within the Ghanaian economy. So they are hoping to bring back a more industrialized country. Also, women's empowerment and national resilience. This is clearly obvious because even the flag bearer is a woman, and she's saying that when they do get the nod, they're going to do a lot more women empowerment and ensure that there is national resilience. And the national resilience is hovering on the subject of how Ghana can be a lot more independent, or our independence will be more meaningful than being independent, but then being dependent on other countries for aid and assistance. Then finally, there's governance at your doorstep is what they are promising, where governance at your doorstep would mean they're going to run a kind of governance that will be easy for you to, or the governance structure will be very easily accessible to every Ghanaian and will be at every nook and cranny. So these are the key pillars the CPP is promising if they do get the nod from Ghanaians. So let's go and bring you what exactly the CPP flag bearer has been saying now. You know, they have made bold promises to Ghanaians and saying that 20,000 Ghana cedis will be given to every citizen. No, hold on. You need to pay particular attention to this. The CPP is promising to give every Ghanaian aged 18 years and above 20,000 Ghana cedis if they do win the election. And they said this at the launch of the party's women-centric manifesto, which was launched in Accra. The flag bearer, Akosia Frimpoma Sapong Kumankuma, spoke to the media and talked about how they hope to revive the ideals of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's first president. Let's listen to her.
Yes, Convention People's Party. Because we love people and we think about people, we are saying that we are going to build the industries. But each industry that is going to be built will be owned by some group of people who want to be part of that industry. Everybody is going to have an allocation of 20,000 Ghana cedis. That is what we need by Ghana bashers. 20 million people from age 18 and up. Even if you are 120, it won't matter. Whether you are blind, deaf, sane, can walk, can't walk, you have access. And because you have access, you would have owned the Commander Sugar Factory. With the 20,000, it means that about 30,000 Ghanaians would have had to put their money in the Commander Sugar Factory. Gentlemen, tell me how, you knowing that is your money is there, would you allow the sugar factory to have been there for 10 years? Listen, I am standing here as Convention People's Party leader because I want you to own Ghana. I want you to be able to have ownership of your life, your family, and take care of them. You must have businesses that are yours. Your businesses today are being taken over by foreign firms. You are standing there right in front of your eyes. Ghana is slipping from you. Ghana is slipping from all of you right here now. Ghana.
I'm tempted to say hallelujah, somebody, because it looked like Madam Kuma was preaching there, preaching the CPP manifesto, preaching to the hearts and minds of Ghanaians how they intend to govern if they get the nod from you as the voter. But we'll see what it will look like for them going into December 7th, because clearly I'm yet to see a campaign, an active campaign sort of, from the Convention People's Party. The two leading parties are those that have been crisscrossing the entire country, selling their message and hoping to convince you to vote for them. One of them is Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, the flag bearer of the New Patriotic Party, Now, we know that he's been in the Ashanti region and is promising that he would improve upon the free senior high school program and is ensuring that the quality of it would also increase. Let's quickly touch base with Daniel Opoku, who is our man following Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. He's joined us. Daniel, thank you once again for joining us on Election 360. First of all, which particular constituency in the Ashanti region is Dr. Bawumia, and what has he been saying?
Right, good afternoon to you. The MPP flag bearer, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, is in the new Edubiase constituency, where he's been engaging the traditional leaders, the Muslim clerics and the clergy. It is part of the structure that he has been able to fashion out when it comes to campaigning in the Ashanti region, campaigning across the various regions that he has visited. But let's not forget that the Ashanti region is the 16th region that the vice president, the flag bearer, has decided to campaign. It's the final region for him to campaign now. Now, he's been talking to the chiefs about, one, the living allowance that he's promised them. That since 1957, all the chiefs are given some meager allowances, and the allowances are only made available to all the paramount chiefs. But now, under his presidency, or in case of Wayne's power, he's going to narrow down, or going to trickle down to the sub chiefs, and also queen mothers are going to benefit from the living allowance. Now, another issue has to do with the disability. Those who are suffering disability now says that under his presidency, all people suffering from disability to access tertiary education or go to university for free. And that is a major policy initiative by His Excellency, the Vice President. And also a quota system we made available for them to work in the public sector under his presidency. Then the issue about the Ghana card also came in, which he received the necessary applause from the people, that the Ghana card has been able to help them in a lot of their transactions, and he has renewed his commitment that it is something that is going to strengthen. The Agenda 111 is also a major policy initiative that the Vice President says by the close of this year, in excess of 40 will be completed. Then by next year, the rest of the Agenda 111 projects will be completed. But the chiefs also raised some concerns with regard to the administrative that they need the community, and also they need electricity extension, where the Vice President has renewed his commitment that by the close of this month, or close of getting to the election, or before the elections, the astro itself will be completed, and also they are likely to get their power or electricity extension within 2 weeks. All these things will come to fruition before elections take place. So that has been the commitment of the Vice President. Today he's visiting 3 major constituencies. So he's begun with a new Edubiase. He's currently addressing party faithful, where he engages them and tells them the need for them to vote for him, comparing himself with the former president, John Dramani Mahama, saying that when he comes, he can only rule for 4 years. Then he, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, will be the president for 8 years. So obviously, he will come back to account to the people of New Edubiase. So after this, that's when he'll be heading to Adansi Asokwa. Adansi Asokwa is a sitting member of Palketi Hammond's constituency, where the Vice President will be going to the place. Then finally, he will end his tour at Fomena before the close of day today. All structured, because the first part is a stakeholder engagement. Then the second phase will be Bawumia Connect, where he engages the party faithful and also those at the grassroots level.
Right. Daniel, thank you for that report, clearly putting all the issues in perspective for us. Daniel Opoku is our man following Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia's campaign in the Ashanti region. And like he indicated, he probably will be concluding all of his campaigning activities in the region and then eventually move to where he votes, because we are barely 22 days to the elections, and whatever other comes up, we'll definitely keep you in the know as well on your election command center. And the Ashanti region comes up for conversation because that's where he is. Why is he there? Because people are questioning. He's already, or the region is already an MPP region. They've won it over time. Why has the candidate decided to stay there all this while, 10, 11 days and counting? It probably would be because they intend to increase the vote margin. You want to increase your vote margin going into the elections because the numbers may be knocked off for you if the NDC also does win in other regions that may not have as much number as the Ashanti region gives to the NPP. It's a game of numbers, like we keep saying. 85% is what the NPP is promising to win in the Ashanti region. And all of these efforts are intended to ensure that they hit that mark. Some pollsters have already discounted that the NPP may not be able to make even up to 80%. But we'll see here at your election command center and on Election360, we'll try and be dissecting those minute issues that would influence the total voter population and voter turnout and voter decisions on election day. That's it for our show today. Thank you for watching. I am Martin Esiedidati. As always, hasta la vista.